So it's now time to practice layout design. So we're going to go through a poster project using the brand that we just developed, this Parsons Dynamic logo. We're going to take this logo and color scheme and some of these branded elements to create a dynamic, no pun intended, poster. So the first thing we're going to do is go to open a new document in Illustrator. So I'm just going to do File, New. And this is 2019's version. I think they changed this in 2017. This is a brand new kind of interface, but if you have an older version, it may look a little different. But for a poster, I'm working in inches because I'm in the United States, but you can work in centimeters elsewhere. So I'm just going to do a standard, I'm going to do a flyer design that's going to be an 8.5 by 11. But I'm also going to leave this open where I can scale it higher if I want to make a 2 by 3 foot poster. But I could also scale it smaller and make it a social media graphic. So we're going to be able to make this one 8.5 by 11 inch flyer, and we'll be able to make all the sizes we need from this particular size. So I'm going to make this a print project, but I can also make it a digital project very easily by exporting it as a JPEG when I'm done. But I'm going to go ahead and add a bleed. And I have this locked so that when I press up, it's bleed added on all sides. So in this case, it's an 1/8 of an inch bleed. So 1 divided by 8 is 0.125. If I needed to do a 1/4 inch bleed, which is usually not required unless it's a large banner or something super big. The bigger you get, the more bleed that may be required. But this is a simple question to ask to your printer. How much bleed do I need? And they'll say, I need an 1/8 of an inch. So you would do an 1/8 of an inch all around. So you'll see the red line, which indicates the bleed. I'm going to want to carry everything over to this bleed. This will be eventually trimmed off in the printing process, and this will be where it actually is shown. And so that's just for the printing process to have a little extra leeway just in case the machine prints off a few centimeters or a few millimeters. So that's just for the printer. We won't see anything in that little area, but sometimes it's required by printers if you're going to get this sent off and printed. So let's go ahead and get the layout concept. We're going to do a couple of different layout ideas, and we're just going to brainstorm, and I'm going to go through this raw process. I have not thought about this project ahead of time. I just have the branding elements right over here. This is all I have, so you get to kind of go with me as I think about how to lay this out. So before I bring over my branded assets, I want to go to View, and I want to go down to Rulers. So View, Rulers, and Show Rulers. When I do layout design, I like to have my rulers on. I don't really care for it when I'm doing other things like social media graphics, but when I'm doing print projects, I love to be able to have my rulers so I know sizing-wise where I'm at with particular objects. It also helps out when I'm doing layout stuff and I'm thinking about the rule of thirds. So let's talk about the rule of thirds. What is the rule of thirds? We're going to do a little trick so we can go ahead and set up the rule of thirds. Basically, it's 2 vertical lines and 2 horizontal lines that evenly divides a particular piece into 9 squares. And wherever you see the kind of coming together of 2 squares, usually ends up being nice places to position a certain piece. So I'm just going to show you this in action, and we'll be able to apply it later to kind of make sure if we're not sure about a certain placement, we can bring in our little grid and we can figure out if we like the placement. So let's go ahead and create that. I'm going to do a box, just a simple box. Let's just make it a solid color. Go ahead and bring this back down, and I'm going to show you a little trick. So I'm just highlighting my box. I'm going to Object, going down to Path, and going down to Split into Grid. And we're going to be able to split this into 9 even boxes. So split into grid, and I'm going to do 2 rows. I'm going to do preview, or 3 rows and 3 columns. So now that I have my 3 columns and my 3 rows, I'm going to be able to add guides. So go ahead and click on Add Guides, and that's going to add these little guides at the end. We're going to click on OK. And we're going to delete what we just created, but we're going to keep those guides in place. So I'm just deleting all these little boxes. And you'll notice it created these thin little lines. And this will be your rule of thirds that'll help us with placement. And so a lot of times if you have a particular object and you're not sure where to place it, sometimes tucking it right in the corner of a rule of thirds will be a nice position. And so what we're going to do so this doesn't interfere with our other elements is we're just going to select this entire grid that we just made. Make sure those are grouped, and they are grouped. I'm going to go over to my Layers panel. Go ahead and drag this over here. I'm creating a new layer right down here, and I'm going to copy and paste that into my layer. So there's a special way I'm going to copy and paste. So I'm going to go up to Edit. Let's go ahead and cut it out. You can do the keyboard shortcut if you want to. I'm going to paste it in the new layer. But what I'm going to do, instead of just pasting it, because I can paste it, but it's going to be shifted a little bit over. And I don't want that. I want it pasted exactly in that same position. I'm going to go up to Edit and do Paste in Place. And what Paste in Place is going to do is going to paste it in the exact place that I cut it out. So it's not going to shift it at all. So that's kind of a neat trick for uses on when you're copying and pasting photos that need to remain the exact same space. Just do Edit and then Paste in Place. So now that it's here, I'm going to lock that layer because I don't want that layer to be changed or shifted in a new way. So this is a locked layer. I'm going to go back to my layer 1, and this is where my design is going to reside. We'll just call that rule of thirds. Oops, if I could spell that right. Rule of thirds. And that's our grid. We also have our other grid, which we can toggle with our little shortcut. I'm going to do Command and then the quotation. And this will also be another help. And we don't use those at the same time. So the rule of thirds is something to keep in mind when we're doing the basic part of the layout, but it's not something we always have to have on. So if I do Command and do my quotation mark, I'm going to get my main grid. So this is really going to help with more minute placements of typography. This will help us align typography to the top portion, and we have typography on the bottom. It's nice to have that grid to be able to feel like we know where certain boxes should end and certain text boxes should line up. So I'm going to toggle this off and on using my shortcut throughout this design. So Command quotation, I'm going to go ahead and turn it off for now.